Sekeres and Price for Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024, coming to you from the Go-Goat Sports Studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. And if you're planning to come downtown for a game or an event, make it a staycation, call the Wall, 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres and Price rate. Some blackout dates apply. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Great Sass Hit and Switches conducting things. Big show coming up for you, and it's all brought to you by Applewood Auto.
Applewood Infinity at the Richmond Auto Mall has the 2023 QX50 and QX55s with leasing from 1.99% up to 33 months, and you get $1,500 in bonus cash as well. So go check it out. Take one for a test drive. It's so easy at the Richmond Auto Mall. It's all good at Applewood.
Poll question today. We're asking you, will the Oilers catch the Canucks for first place? This is, of course, in the Pacific Division, where the Vancouver Canucks have 8 games remaining and lead the Pacific Division, and they first moved into first place in the division back on November 15th. 100 points for the Canucks. The Oilers are 5 back. They have a game in hand. There is one head-to-head remaining right now. Vancouver looks like it's going to win all tiebreakers, so the Oilers would have to finish ahead of the Canucks when it comes to points. Yes or no? You can vote at Sekeres and Price on Twitter and YouTube.
The Canucks need only be mediocre to win the division. 4-4 to me wins the division. It forces the Oilers to go 7-2, which is doable for them. But that's a hell of a run, given they've been so hot for the second half of the season. It demands that they are. Again, they've got amongst the most difficult schedules down the stretch of any NHL team, and they've got a tight window as well, playing a lot of games with just 73 games under their belt so far. So, hey, this is a big 2-game swing here for the Canucks. It's a 3-game road trip, but it just means the next 48 hours, Matt, they can do half the work that they need to do. If they need 4 wins, my goodness, in 36 hours, they could have half of those.
Yes, and one of the things we kicked around last week was, okay, you're going to play Arthur Shiloffs against the Ducks, say, matinee Sunday, Easter Sunday. Do you play DeSmith in the 2 Arizona games remaining and the Calgary games? Pick off the weak ones from the herd.
Yeah.
Make sure you get your points there, clinch everything, and then worry about who plays goal.
Well, it's a real interesting question based on what might happen tonight. If the Canucks can do what they have been doing, and that is holding teams to under 25 shots and 2 goals or less. If it's another one of those games tonight, Matt, 23 shots for the Golden Knights, Canucks win 3-2. I would be tempted to roll DeSmith back out tomorrow night and give him the back-to-back, especially considering it's 2 days off after this. And Arthur Shiloffs did fine. He is a good player. I'm not denying any of that, but you do want to take care of business, and you can't roll the dice. I think if they win tonight and it's a rather light
Easy
affair,
day.
then I think you roll them back out.
Here's the thing, like, when's the last time Casey DeSmith played back-to-back games?
It's true.
It's probably a long time. That is not necessarily putting a player in his comfort zone, but by the same stakes, you sometimes are going to have to ask players to go above and beyond their comfort zone.
He's played 1 game in the last 8 days as DeSmith. So it's not like he's currently overtaxed. If there was ever a moment where you think, does he have the gas to go back to back? It would probably be now. Hasn't played in 5 days. He's got 1 game in 8.
Right. Hasn't played since Thursday, the 3-1 loss to the Dallas Stars. Had previously carried the mail and made every start for the Vancouver Canucks, 7 of them in a row after the Thatcher Demko injury. More on the goaltending and Demko in a second. But first, let's hear from Tyler Myers. He certainly isn't looking at the Edmonton Oilers and what they're doing on a night-to-night basis.
I don't really think about the Oilers much. You look at the standings, they seem to be playing very well. I haven't seen any specifics, but it's like I said before, it's something, it's just one of the things to play for. Getting first in the Pacific would be a great accomplishment for us. And these last 8 games, we're playing some good teams. A lot of Pacific games, and we want to make sure that we're just getting our game where it needs to get to.
Sounds like the big defenseman didn't want to give the Oilers too much credit here.
Mm-hmm.
Did talk about winning the Pacific Division, and Rick Tocchet had an interesting answer on that. He was sort of between two minds. Let's hear from Coach on what winning the division would mean.
Listen, you finish first, you hang your hat on something, but I don't really, it doesn't really matter to me if you're not playing well. Like, you can hang a banner and not, then all of a sudden, but put it this way, if you're going to be first, you have to play well down the stretch. So, I don't think we're going to hang a banner if you're not playing well. So I guess that's the way you look at it. So we need to play. That's why I look at it, playing well. Whatever happens with the rewards of it, great. But I look at the initial thing is playing well. How do we get to our playing well?
So if they back into a division title,
Rick
no
Tocchet
banner.
doesn't want to hang no
banner.
banner. I like telling him, Coach, they're going to hang the banner one way or the other.
Yeah, even if you back in to a division title.
You lose your final three and you're spitting mad and you still win the Pacific, they're going to hang the banner.
Yeah.
But I do think he got to the truth there as he was thinking out the answer and talking it through, and that is you're going to have to play well to win the division from here.
Well, they are getting...
Because you're probably going to have to beat Edmonton, or you're going to have to beat Vegas, maybe Vegas 2 times, perhaps Winnipeg on the final night, so perhaps LA on Saturday. So
I fully agree with
you're
his
going to need
sentiments.
some quality wins here. One would think, unless you pick off the 2 Arizonas and Calgary, and somehow, some way that's enough. I think you could probably make the case that they're going to be playing well or have to play well to win the division.
Okay, so the Canucks went 5-3-1 at home. Imagine they ripped it up. Imagine they went 7-1-1 in this homestand. Almost nothing left to play for. They'd have a 9-point lead in the division with 2. They'd have nothing left to play for. They'd need 1 or 2 wins to win the title. That would be I could totally see a guy like Rick Tocchet not being super crazy about that. Tough to get guys to be bearing down on things that he wants them to work on going into the playoffs. This keeps their attention and the quality of opposition, especially because they've got quality opposition. If you had nothing to play for, but you got Vegas, you got LA, you got Edmonton, you got Winnipeg, that's not a great mindset to go into those big games against good teams when you want to be testing yourself for the playoffs. So this is sort of the best case scenario. They're probably going to be okay for the division title, but they got to dot I's, they've got to cross T's, and they still do need to attend to these big games. So that's why this one versus Vegas and all the other ones I just mentioned, if I'm Rick Tocchet, I like the scenario that they're in. They're in the driver's seat, but they need to do it. They need to execute.
And he said just that over the course of the weekend, actually, with
Yeah.
a question coming from our very own Jeff Patterson with regards to the schedule that's remaining, the teams that are on it, and of course, what's at stake here in the final 8 games. Can you believe we're down to 8 games, the final 10th of the NHL?
The last 20 were kind of tough.
It goes so fast when they're winning.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, it does.
And it just drags. It's merciless. It's never ending when they lose.
500 hockey is really tough to watch. And they've been above 500.
How about 378 hockey or whatever the hell we were watching the last few years? It's been abysmal to watch in late March.
For the past month, the Canucks have been above 500, not much, but they've been above 500. Even then, based on what we've seen before this season, the first half of the season, being 550 hockey.
The alternative is, in years past, you and I on April 2nd have done shows about college free agents and who deserves some run from the farm.
Sawyer Minio would have been top of show.
Freaking top story Sawyer Minio.
Going to
Jonathan
the Jonathan
Lectremacki debut.
Yeah, it's nice to be on this side.
Ratu with a 2-point game. All of that is central in our orbit if this team is desperately out of it. Like they have been for far too many seasons over the last decade.
For the last time, I'll say this. How many times have we received the feedback in the last 10 years? You guys love it when this team sucks. Really? Does it sound like we love it when this team sucks? This is a lot more fun covering a team with potential.
Oh, needless to say, the Stanley Cup playoffs are one of the great events in global sports.
Not covering it sucks.
You get to participate this year.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our top story. Clinched. Finally. Didn't do it on their own volition. Had a couple of opportunities. But on the weekend, got the results from Minnesota and St. Louis to officially wrap up a berth in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And a reminder, this is the first time they've earned their way in 9 years. They were part of an expanded postseason field during the COVID year, where we were talking about play-in series, where we were drawing the distinction between play-in or between playoffs and postseason. Remember that, Blake?
Yes, I do.
They're going to the postseason, but they're not yet in the Stanley Cup playoffs 4 years ago in the bubble. But this is the first time they have earned their way in since that Willie Desjardins season of 2015, Redeem Verbata, you may remember, and others. First round series loss to the Calgary Flames in 6 games. But here we are back in the Stanley Cup playoffs for the city of Vancouver. And gosh, it is well overdue, and Canucks fans have been through some shit over the last 9 years. So I'm quite happy that Canucks fans get their opportunity to celebrate again this April, get back to the Stanley Cup playoffs, enjoy that edge of your seat, pins and needles, every bounce of the puck. You're just dying. That's going to start either April 20th, 21st, 22nd, somewhere around there. We anticipate game 1, and here at Rogers Arena as well, getting a chance to start at your home rink. So looking forward to that. Dakota Joshua, he knows how much it meant to this club and its fan base. Let's hear from Sunday's hero against Anaheim on clinching a playoff berth.
Yeah, very exciting for the team, for the city, the organization. We can feel and tell how important it is, not only, player to player, but, for everybody involved. That was a goal of ours as we start off. And yeah, like you said, just to get into the dance, is the first step, and then you go from there. So nice to get that behind us and, build towards it.
A charmed season for Dakota Joshua personally here.
He's a big reason why they are clinched for a playoff berth. I mean, he's been extraordinary this year, missed 18 games, and yet came right back and was the guy we all remembered. He's now up to 15 goals in 55 games, 28 points. He scores 2 against Anaheim on Sunday, including the game winner, and including an absolute gorgeous between the legs goal. Let's hear from Dakota Joshua on his highlight reel.
I don't know if I tried a whole lot, but back in the day I used to be on the power play, so I know, some things to do out there, and I was just lucky enough to have that one going.
I love the reminder. There was a point in time where I was an offensive player, fellas, and where I got power play time. And look, it may well be coming here in greater measure for the Vancouver Canucks.
Would you bet against him scoring 20 this season? 5 goals in 8 games?
Probably, yeah.
Is this his best? This is his best assignment of the season.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Like he's getting looks now
with Miller and Garland. Although I'm not. I do wonder how much we're looking at experimentation here with these forward trios right now. But more on that later.
By the way, he's played 1 playoff game, Dakota Joshua.
Yeah, with the St. Louis Blues in 22.
8.5 minutes of ice time in that game. I think he's going to get a few more.
I think he's going to get a few more.
Yeah.
What's he averaging here with the Canucks now? Yeah, he's up to 14 minutes and 9 seconds per night. Last week, when Jeff and Irf were in, Blake, we were talking about, okay, who's going to be the hero on the wing? Is there a winger on the team or even down in Abbotsford who can step up and solve one of the Canucks' big problems right now, and that is getting sufficient offense from the flank, secondary scoring, if you will, beyond JT Miller. And, well, for a while there, JT Miller and Brock Besser, but also on given where the power play is going, and that's getting better too, albeit against Anaheim with a couple of goals. And look, people shouted Dakota Joshua, but I think it says something about the rest of the winger group that he misses 18 games. He comes back, he gets the plum assignment, he's scoring the goal. To quote our late friend, we need an army here on the wing. We need more than Dakota Joshua.
Yeah, I mean, count your lucky stars that even he was available to drop into the lineup, because my goodness, with him out of the lineup, there was an even bigger absence of wingers to go to and experiment with. So it feels amazing, I think, for a lot of Canucks fans to see him drop in. But yeah, I mean, Matt, I would just love for Vasily Podkolzin, despite the fact that he hasn't looked out of place out there, if he could have 4 points in 12 games instead of 1, 5 points in 12 games instead of 1.
Well, that's it, Blake.
You know, like, great that he's doing the assignments well. He's attending to a lot of the details.
Mm-hmm.
But as a 10th overall pick, can you just
It's
give
not
us
enough.
something, just a little
not
bit of
enough.
something? Because, Matt, I really do believe if he was doing that, if he was getting a couple of goals, a couple of more assists, he's probably getting a pretty plum assignment right now.
Oh, this is absolutely carpe diem time. I mean,
Yeah.
if he had been able to do more in these 12 games from an offensive standpoint, for sure, to some degree, he did get pretty decent assignments.
He did.
There.
He hasn't been on the fourth line a whole lot.
Mhm.
So, but I would just love a few more things to
Oh,
hang your hat on.
no
Vasily, come on, take a shot.
No doubt. Let's hear from Connor Garland on a guy who has been one of his line mates for most of the year, of course, with Teddy Bluger. They were a fantastic third line, one of the best in the NHL. Now they got JT Miller in between them. Let's hear from Connor Garland on Dakota Joshua and what makes him so good.
Yeah, I've played with Dak for a while, and we work, stuff people don't see after practice. I think we were on the ice together one day, just me and him in Buffalo for an hour, and you get to see what guys are capable of. And his hands in tight are very underrated. His hands on the wall, he makes a lot of slip plays. He holds a guy in his back for a second, so it's kind of similar to what he did there. Just held it for a second and used his hands. So no, I know how good he is.
Yeah, a little bit of Jerome McGinley, circa 2010 Olympics. The slip play off the wall. I thought that was a great breakdown from Connor Garland, who incidentally may have a career in broadcasting. With his career. He is a terrific communicator about the game. But the hands in tight for a big body, for a 6'3", 200-plus body, moves pretty well for a big body. And what I love about it this year is you can see the confidence brimming in the young man. You can see that he's doing things and trying things this year because things are going so well for him.
That's the way it works.
It's like Blake at Northlands. Yeah, it's 230 away, but I've got this 3-wood.
Well,
there's a week or two every summer where that's the case with Blake. Anyways, but he's meshing with different centers as well. And really, I think his game translates. And the more and more I look at this Canucks team, and the more and more I look at who's not going or guys who are nicked and you've got to worry about them, I do wonder whether Dakota Joshua is forging his way into a permanent top 6 role.
And Matt, I would love to say that the scouting department, Patrick Alvin, saw this from him in his stead with the St. Louis Blues, and that's what led them to be so high on him when they
saw
him.
something. I mean, he's been a superb.
He had 4 career goals coming into his Vancouver Canucks assignment. So as much as we saw flashes of this guy, and he's on a way higher scoring pace this season than he was last year, he had 11 and 79 last year. We saw that a couple of his goals were really nice last season. We're like, oh, I guess that's what they saw. But did they? There's only 4 NHL goals. So when you see it at the AHL level, my goodness, you see lots of guys do lots of things at the AHL level.
I think they would argue that we thought there was more there. Whether or not they saw it to this degree, I think is probably perhaps a little rich, but clearly they saw an NHL player there, and clearly they were right.
You should give credit to Ryan Johnson on that one, because he was running Utica at the time during the COVID shortened season when they shared the AHL team with the Blues organization. So that's where they kind of got their scouting reports in on Joshua. And look at him now.
But even then, he played 6 games for the Comets.
Yep.
I mean, that's not a sample size for you to go, whoa, love that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Nope. But
but practices matter too.
Yeah,
right?
and it's enough to be like, okay, well, let's keep some tabs on this guy going forward.
Yeah.
If he's a free agent, big body, soft hands.
Well, and given when they signed him too, because they jumped on him early. Like I would bet that he had more than one fan in the organization. I bet there were several scouts, as they say, on the table, banging the fist for Dakota Joshua, and great job by the professional scouting department from the Vancouver Canucks, because he's been indispensable this season. Okay, let's get to the other wingers. Besser left practice on Monday, tried to go, had a conversation with the medical staff. They basically threw him out of practice. We're looking at Baines or Lafferty to potentially get elevated here. Philip Hronek was given the day off. You're in the time of year where veterans, and particularly veterans who have played heavy minutes, don't anticipate seeing them at a whole lot of morning skates. Don't anticipate that they're going to participate in every practice from here till the end of the season. Nikita Zadorov expected to draw back into the lineup, and that's something else to look for here in the final 8 games, particularly the games against Arizona and Calgary. Do we try and spot rest some of our defensemen? Is there still too much at stake where we don't feel comfortable load management, spot resting defensemen? And then there's Thatcher Demko, and there seemed to be a little confusion on this because it didn't sound like he was going to go on the trip. Then there was a visual of Thatcher Demko deplaning with the rest of his teammates. He had not been on the ice when Coach Tocchet addressed the media on Monday. Well, he's now been on the ice. He hit the ice after the main group at morning skate in Vegas. There's no target yet for his return, or at least none that's disclosed publicly. But what do you think? Would one game be enough? Do you need more than one game to see Thatcher Demko?
I would want 2. I would want a couple of games, and I don't think we're in any place where that's even in doubt right now. If he's coming on the ice now on April the 2nd, I mean, we're still 2 weeks away from the penultimate game, so he could take another 2 weeks off and still get 2 weeks in, 2 games in. So I don't think there's any question he gets 2 games. Maybe next week at home versus the Coyotes. Something like that to get him into his first game, something with probably fewer stakes, unless he wants to play in a high stakes game, maybe the Monday game versus the Golden Knights.
Well, it's funny because the other thing is if you get too deep into the schedule, you may be playing a better team that has nothing to play for, whereas you play a lesser team that's out of the playoffs, but they have a bunch of guys who are hungry and playing for jobs and roster spots and things like that. I'm not necessarily sure you're there now because all of the top teams still have something to play for, but that's another consideration.
See how these 3 games go on the road.
The Arizona game may be a tougher game than one of the ones
happens
at the end.
It happens
because of what they're playing for and what a better team.
But if they get 2 wins and an OTL here in these 3 games, and they're at 105, I mean, you're playing with house money almost at that point. I think we need the 3 games of education here. I don't think he plays. I think he's just with them to remain with them and get back into the swing of things. But it's good to see this progressing.
What about the Edmonton game on the 13th? Because really, and look, as you say, Canucks could win a bunch of games in a row here and make the point moot. Edmonton could go into a tailspin and make it all moot. But more than likely, Saturday, April 13th in Edmonton, which is game number 79. There would be 3 games left after that for the Oilers. Is it game number 79 for the Canucks? No, it's game 80 for the Canucks. The division could very well be coming down to that, right?
That's why playing on Wednesday versus the Coyotes, 2 full days off and an easy flight to Edmonton, I think you can play both of those games. And then you give him one of the final 2, Calgary or Winnipeg. To me, that's the best case scenario.
Put it this way. If he's not 100% ready to go, like you have to be overwhelmingly confident. I would not want his first game to be that game in Edmonton.
No, I don't think so either. Because even if it's been resolved, Edmonton's going to want to prove something.
Oh, you know it. I mean, they
plant a seed for the second round.
Are they ever?
Yeah.
Because you know how butthurt they are about the results earlier in the season against the Canucks. Right down to Connor McDavid, questioning who was on the ice for late power plays.
Yeah.
For the Canucks. They feel like the Canucks ran up the score on them a couple times.
And they want to show that they are a different team.
All those things. So, yes, if he's ready to go, even if he gets the tune-up against Arizona prior to the Oilers game, I'm with you. I do not drop him into that game as a first start for what it would do for what it could potentially do to his confidence and what it could potentially do to the Edmonton Oilers' confidence. And hey, that could be a very tricky decision because the division could well be at stake in that game. We shall see how the clubs do prior to that. Lindholm. A lot has happened with Lindholm since we've seen you, partner.
Yeah.
I'm wondering where you're at on Elias Lindholm, who continues not to play or practice. But we're told it's
he's skating on his own.
Skated on his own.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you can continue to get some results, keep your head above water, fend off the Edmonton Oilers without Lindholm, it's sort of the same logic as you have with Demko is really you need him for the playoffs. I mean, you did okay without him anyway before he was acquired, and Kuzmenko was doing nothing for you. So, give him every chance to be 100% and hope that that's what all of this is about. That maybe without even him knowing, maybe this injury even pre-existed what he thinks it when it started. Maybe it goes back to acquisition time for the Canucks or even before that. Who knows? But we know that 100% Lindholm is still going to be a heck of a lot better than 80% Lindholm, no matter what you think of Lindholm. So, yeah, give him the time. And if that means, dropping him into the final week of the season, I think it would be ideal for him to play a couple of games before the playoffs. Certainly one anyway. But if 2 more weeks of nursing whatever it is what he needs, then again, you've got 2 more full weeks before you've got the penultimate game 81. And I think you want injured players to start to shake off rust in game 81.
We asked the poll question that I know you were looking forward to. What's the team strength, offense or defense? Defense won.
Which is hysterical.
Given the first
it is. 50 games of the season.
Many of the comments were like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so many people said, I can't believe I'm voting defense, but here we are.
Yeah.
Have you resigned yourself to the fact that this is going to be a stack the center iceman, Lindholm as your third line center, probably at the expense of his and potentially the team's offense, but that's just the way that they're going to have to go because of he's more comfortable at center? Or are you still holding out hope that there's an ability to try him on Elias Pettersson's wing or put him in the middle with Elias Pettersson on the wing? Something that is increasingly seemingly square pegs and round holes.
I'm still holding out hope. I still think that this team is the best with
a stacked top 6. You've been consistent on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now,
who is that now, incidentally?
Well, it's a great question.
Yes.
I think that the previous Suitors and Mikheyevs are out of that mix now that presuming full health. So let's just, for the sake of bodies, Joshua with Miller and Besser.
Okay. Yeah, see, I'm with you too. Like I see a Besser-Miller reunion in part because I see trouble with a Besser-Pettersson line in the playoffs, but go ahead. So that's Höglander with PD and
Lindholm.
Right.
Yeah. And then you've got Garland, Bluger, and McCabe.
Okay.
And again,
I'm writing all this down just so you know.
Yeah. I mean, Garland's play, that seems punitive for Connor Garland.
Which is, why just when I hear that, my visceral is why not Garland on that line and just Lindholm's our third line center?
Except that I think that Garland can make Bluger better.
Yeah.
And I think Garland makes a lot of players better.
Joshua was on the other wing. Like, if you had the wingers to be able to do that, I would be all in.
And I think I'd be tempted to drop Joshua down.
And in fairness, my mind has changed several times on this.
Yeah.
Since the Joshua injury, since the Lindholm acquisition. I don't envy whatever they do night 1 of the playoffs is going to be scrutinized.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it may well be a thing where you're looking at a blender in game from the first period of the first playoff game. Like that possibility is out there because of everything that has come to pass with your forward group, the outages you've had on the wing, the fact that Lindholm hasn't fit as a winger.
But one thing you also can't accommodate for is everybody elevates in the playoffs, but not everybody elevates the same amount in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So, Does against all odds Ilya Mikheyev look really good in the playoffs?
Mhm.
You know, is he better off with Miller and Besser while Bluger, Garland, and Joshua are fully reunited? Is that better to have those guys run roughshod against better matchups? I mean, all these are great questions, and I think that, you know, Rick Tockett's got a bunch of those things at his fingertips, and those are options for him.
Canucks team awards. The voting is open now. Best defenseman, I think, is a fait accompli.
You think so?
Yeah. MVP, most exciting unsung hero. Those are interesting calls.
Yeah.
Those are calls we're going to talk about more here in what's left of the season. It could very well be the case where you're looking at the same guy in a couple of those categories, and it could very well be the guy that wins best defenseman as well. But I think it's more fun this year, given you have real races here, contenders in a number of these spots. Whereas in previous years with some of these, either there wasn't a race to be had, or because the season had left such a bad taste in your mouth, you really didn't care.
Should they,
or at least didn't care as much as you would otherwise, like this year.
should they recategorize the unsung hero?
Well, look, the explosion of media everywhere.
That's
every
right.
Vancouver Canuck is sung.
That's
when
the
they do
thing.
well, every Vancouver Canuck is sung.
Like best
But
role
like-
player? Best
No,
is
but-
it better to call
okay.
that maybe? Best role player?
Well, do you want to win best role player?
Do you want to win best unsung
No.
player? I don't know.
Well, so no, but so there's a couple of ways that you can delineate sung and
Mhm.
unsung. Number one is just who are the all-star level players, right? And the Canucks had a ton of all-stars this year.
And take those guys out of the mix.
And then
Yeah.
everybody else is unsung. That may well be how I go at it this year, because that gives me a Dakota Joshua versus Nils Höglander debate to have in my head
Doesn't that
as to who is more.
double Connor Garland?
Hey, sure, he's in the mix too. He's probably bronze medalist for me. But
Really? Yeah.
yeah. Well,
55 games for Joshua. Really?
that may well be the deciding point, Blake, that the best ability is availability, and he hasn't been as available. I mean, Höglander is up to the 22 goals now. Garland has the lead in points. Joshua, is Joshua the best points per game? Could well be.
MVP is just down to Hughes and Miller now, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
because Thatcher missed too much
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose if Elias went off in the final 8 games, he could maybe get himself back in.
Mm-hmm. It's all fan voting, all these awards.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's still pretty tough for PD or Demko.
I would agree. I think it's Anna Miller or Hughes for team MVP. And then, exciting, as we say each and every year, exciting is in the eye of the beholder. I could understand people thinking JT Miller most exciting. I could understand people thinking Quinn Hughes most exciting. I could understand people thinking Connor Garland
Mm-hmm.
most exciting. So
It could be a sweep for
it could
for
be
Quinn Hughes.
Well, it could be a 3-category sweep for Quinn Hughes. It could be a 2-category sweep for JT Miller.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Elias Pettersson, game number 400 tonight for the Vancouver Canucks. As J-Pat talked about on his Twitter feed, Elias Pettersson in 399 games as a Vancouver Canuck has 407 points. So he is slightly better than a point per game player over 400 NHL. First of all, we all remember his first game at Rogers Arena, right? And the sneaky look up at the scoreboard as the crowd was chanting.
Yes.
I can't believe we're at 400 games already.
Yeah, it's true.
As JPAD notes, he is tied with Don Lever for 12th in all-time Canucks scoring. He's 2 points away from catching Alex Edler for 11th. And of course, Quinn Hughes is chasing Alex Edler as well on the rank of all-time scoring for Vancouver Canucks defensemen, and could well get there next year. And then he's 13 away from catching Bo Horvat for 10th overall.
How many points from Horvat? 13?
He's 13 away from Bo Horvat, so that puts
Yeah.
Horvat at 420 Vancouver.
Yeah, I
Canucks
don't think
points.
in 8 games
Probably
he's
not-
likely to catch Horvat.
Probably not get to Bo, but I would suspect ends the season in 11th place with Bo, the next one to tick off early
next season. Yeah. Oh, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, the superstars of today are racking it up. I mean, I saw Austin Matthews has almost tied Jason Spezza in goals already. Like, and Austin Matthews is 26. Just Spezza had a nice career, and he's already passing guys like that. So, that's the beauty of this generation of NHL players. There's some goals on the board, and it's really fun to watch NHL hockey.
Well, 60 goal seasons. There have been 43 in NHL history, and
the way he's playing right now, he might hit 70.
He's got 2 of them.
Yeah, he might hit 70. He might.
Like Bure has 2 of them. You go back to the high scoring 80s, there are guys who have had a bunch, but wow, to be a 2-time 60 goal scorer in this day and age is pretty fantastic, even if scoring has gone up a little bit since 10 years ago, and certainly since the dead puck era. All right, plenty of happenings beneath the NHL club these days. Jonathan Lekramacky has made his American Hockey League debut for Abbotsford, played a couple of games over the course of the weekend. No points yet for Lekramacky. Sawyer Minio, as we have mentioned, has finished his season with the Seattle Thunderbirds. They are not in the WHL playoffs, so he has been assigned to Abbotsford as well, where he joins the glut of defensemen.
Mm-hmm.
Such a glut that Elias Pettersson, defenseman, EPD, has played just the 1 game down there. Now they're in a playoff chase as well. More news from the Canucks at the prospect level. Ty Mueller, and we talked about him last week, scored a goal for the University of Nebraska Omaha in their NCAA regional. Of course, they lost the hockey game to the University of Minnesota. So his season ended. We wondered, are the Canucks going to sign him? Damn right they did. 11 goals, 26 points this year. And I saw Dave Hall of Canucks Army and others saying, boy, when the Canucks drafted this guy, I was like, what are they doing? Like, this guy, I believe he was even an overager. There is not a lot of upside there. What did they see in this guy? He's had a terrific season. And so here we are. He is signed to one of those 50 contracts that the Vancouver Canucks are able to dole out. He is 21 years old. He turned 21 in February. He's 3 years in the NCAA ranks. 4th round pick, 105th overall in last year's draft. And he's going to get an opportunity to play professional hockey and see what he can do within the Canucks organization. And then there was Jack Malone. Now, Jack Malone, if you've forgotten about Jack Malone, you can be forgiven. Jack Malone was the 180th pick of the 2019 draft for the Vancouver Canucks. A forward at the time he was playing at Youngstown on his way to Cornell University. He has since matriculated to Boston College, where he scored the overtime game winner against Quinnipiac on the weekend to send Boston College to the Frozen Four, where they will play arch rival Boston University, Macklin Celebrini, Aiden Celebrini, Tom Wielander, and Jack Malone, with 12 goals and 25 points in 39 games this year for a Boston College team that was ranked number 1 or close to number 1 for most of the season.
And that's the important thing here, is that Jack Malone was on a stacked team. And so you could say, well, that's inflated his points, except he's not getting the prime real estate because he's on a stacked team. So you can argue it both ways. He's getting better stuff to work with, but he's not getting the prime real estate. So I think you can say this is a little more reminiscent maybe of who he is.
Right.
Because he's getting quality to play with, but he's not exactly getting PP1 here. So that's a nice season for Jack Malone.
Well, 23 years old. So we're talking about an older player here.
Yeah.
But by the same token, when you say stacked team, Will Smith with Cutter Gauthier and Gabriel Perreault was like the best line in college hockey. That's 3 first rounders.
Yeah.
A couple of top 5 picks, if I'm not mistaken, too. Did Smith was 4th overall to San Jose. Gauthier, as we know, is in the news this year, 5th overall to Philly now.
Pro was 23, but
yeah. Pro's a first rounder as well. Ryan Leonard is on that team as well, an 8th overall pick from the Washington Capitals this past season. So he's up against 4 bona fide top prospects, future National Hockey Leaguers. So that's an interesting development for the Canucks as well. A lot of things have gone well beneath the big club this year. Max Sasson, Atu Ratu are having really good closes to their AHL season.
Yeah,
so,
true.
The future, we feel better about, not only feel better about the present, God knows that, we feel better about the future in Canuck land.
You honestly
as well.
have to search hard to find things that didn't go their way this season.
Mm-hmm.
Like you really do. Like, and I mean, organizationally, you have to search hard.
Well, Blake, I mean, we had the
like Nikita Tolopilo was a bit of a flyer.
Yeah, he did well.
Like,
well, we talked about it. I forget what it was, a month or so ago, or what did they wind up losing there? Was it 5 in a row that they lost?
Yeah.
That was the first bout of adversity with the club. Like they've even had great health.
Yeah.
All their best players have played in every game with the exception of Thatcher Demko here recently. So a lot has gone right for the Vancouver Canucks this season, and a lot is going right with Vancouver Canucks affiliates, be they in Abbotsford, be they in college hockey, junior hockey, so far this season as well. Reminder, Saturday, April 20th, noon to 5 p.m. We'll be at the Hollywood Theater on West Broadway in Kitsilano for Bro Do Your Playoffs, a media event celebrating the life and legacy of Jason Bochford. We will look forward to our city's return to the hockey playoffs for the first time in 9 years. We'll have some media panels on stage. Our friends from the matinee are going to play. We'll take audience questions presented by Fountain Tire, and thank you, Fountain Tire, for your support. Tickets are just $10, everybody, and the proceeds are going to the BC Mental Health Foundation in Jason's name. And this was the selection of Catherine Bochford, who is going to be out here and speaking at the event as well. We'd love if you can join us. You can get your tickets, nationgear.ca, $10 a piece, and it's a 19+
good food,
event.
Good brew. It'll be a good time.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. All right, let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by Ben Moss Jewelers. Ben Moss Jewelers, proudly Canadian owned, operated with a history dating back more than 100 years. 5 locations in BC, Willowbrook Mall in Langley, Coquitlam Center among them, committed to customer satisfaction. You can check out the large selection of Canadian mine diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, mine diamonds available on a payment plan to suit your needs. For more info, go to benmoss.com. Ben Moss, for the love of jewelry. Jeff Patterson's going to join us here, playing to go over with Jeff, including the Oilers, Besser, Demko, Zadorov, the defense core, Dakota Joshua, who continues to elevate. Podside will get to some hashtags as well, the best and worst of Twitter. A couple of British Columbia local guys making their bid for the National Football League. John Shannon's going to join as well, extended YouTube show, including John Shannon here. Talk to him about all things Canucks, including potential changes to the way you consume hockey games next year. Streaming coming to the NHL. Are you going to need to have Amazon to watch Monday Night Hockey going forward? And we'll get to the Whitecaps, another victory, and Vancouver Canadians ready to get going here. But J-Pat is next.
Hey, you. No, not you. You. Are you an owner operator? You have a fleet of trucks or cars? Well, CalPro Plus might be the dedicated tire program just for you.
Free program includes exclusive deals and savings, price match guarantee, flexible financing, and preferred pricing on everything you drive.
Also, you get a dedicated member support line. That means that you can get questions answered. Also, they'll source and recommend the right tire for you, your application, and your budget.
Cal Tire's network of 260+ stores are here to help so you can focus on the road ahead. Sign up for free at calproplus.com. Joined now by Rinkwide's Jeff Patterson, our Canucks reporter, after a narrow victory against the Anaheim Ducks. And of course, now everything pointing towards this big matchup coming up with the Edmonton Oilers, which, who knows, could determine first place in the Pacific Division Saturday, April 13th. Jeff, how are you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of ground obviously to cover before they go head-to-head with the Oilers, but it is looming without a doubt. And look, the hockey math, and I know you guys have been asking this as your poll question, so I'll weigh in right there. The hockey math now pretty simple, right? If the Canucks can win 4 of their final 8, that'll get them to 108 points. The Oilers would have to go 7-2 over their final 9 because they've got to finish ahead of the Canucks. The Canucks do hold the tiebreakers, and there's not enough runway now for the Oilers to take possession of the tiebreakers, so they have to finish outright in front of the Vancouver Canucks. So can Edmonton go 7-2? Can the Canucks go 4-4? Canucks have a tough schedule. And they go into some difficult buildings, starting in Vegas, but Los Angeles, the game in Edmonton, and they finish in Winnipeg. And who knows what that game against the Jets on the 18th will mean to either of those teams and what kind of lineups they'll have. But ultimately, I think for me, the question is, can the Canucks carve out 4 wins over their final 8 games? And if they can, I don't think that the Edmonton Oilers are going to be able to catch them.
And Jeff, I will go back to what you brought up on the show last week, now that you've had some time to marinate on it. Are the most important games here the games against Arizona and maybe Calgary, the ones that you can pick off against non-playoff teams?
Certainly, I think you can make a strong argument for that. Now, they're going to see Arizona on the back half of back-to-back, so we'll see if that's an Artur Silov's game, where the fatigue level is, all those types of things. But those are the games that I think you have to do whatever it takes to get the points. And, if it's all about my equation of getting to 4 wins, if you can tick off boxes twice against Arizona and 1 against Calgary, then just eke out a victory somewhere else along the way. And I think you should be good for that division title. So can't be looking ahead to Arizona just yet, but that game is looming certainly as well. But really the focus right now, obviously, on the Vegas Golden Knights.
I just love the next 48-hour period, Jeff. Like, you can just take all the pressure off with back-to-back wins here. Within the blink of an eye, 48 hours, take all the pressure off with back-to-back wins. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying just go out and do it. But, boy, in that world, they feel a whole lot better. Just in general, like, what do you make of the way that they are playing right now in that they are just kind of there? And I don't mean it in terms of winning the Pacific in this case. I just mean, what do you make of the way they're playing, given the playoffs are like 2 weeks away here?
Well, let's put the Anaheim game in a silo. Sunday afternoon, I don't know, afternoon hockey doesn't agree with the Vancouver Canucks for whatever reasons. They better hope that, they don't play much afternoon hockey, and sometimes U.S. television can dictate afternoon starts in the playoffs. Look, the Ducks came in back-to-back, 4-6 all on the road for them. They truly were sitting Ducks, and the Canucks had the 2-0 lead and should have been home and cooled out. So the fact that they let Anaheim back off the mat, didn't love that. And we've seen on that 9-game homestand, we saw a couple of times where there were letdowns that allowed teams to get back in hockey games. So I think that's something that they have to be mindful of, continue to chip away at. But ultimately, they are locked in defensively. They haven't given up more than 3 in regulation in a dozen hockey games. So it doesn't seem to matter whether they're playing good teams or bad teams. They're dialed in defensively. Then the question is, can they do enough to outscore, 2 goals? If you hold the other team to 2 or 3, can they generate that offense? And that remains the issue. And, to score twice on the power play against the Ducks and still need a late game heroics from Dakota Joshua. Again, there were a lot of things that didn't make much sense in that Anaheim game. And afterwards, the players weren't happy. JT Miller didn't really want to talk much about the game. He knew they got away with one. There were others that sort of voiced their displeasure. Ultimately, though, the 2 points against the Ducks mean the same as the 2 points they got in that 10-1 win in San Jose back in early November. It is all about just amassing points right now. But they've got to figure out some ways. And I do wonder if this mindset of being so good and so conscientious defensively, is that impacting their offense? Because, look at the homestand. Elias Pettersson, 7 points. 3 of them came in the Buffalo game. So the other 4 points were spread over 8 games. Guys, he had 11 shot attempts against Dallas the other night, and I thought, great. He's shooting the puck. He's got the puck on his stick in the offensive zone a bunch. He had a 1 shot attempt against the Ducks on Sunday. It came on a first-period power play. Not a single shot attempt at even strength. And his most frequent opponents in terms of ice time against the Ducks, Jackson Lacombe, Gustav Lindstrom, and the rookie Leo Carlson. This wasn't him being asked to take on a matchup role. This was JT Miller taking on Frank Vatrano so that a guy like Elias Pettersson could spread his wings and do some offensive damage. So there are some concerns, without a doubt. And I wrote about it at Canucks Army. To me, and he's not a wild card, but he is such an X factor, talking about Pettersson here. If he can rediscover his top form and top gear with Miller and Hughes and a healthy Demko, like I do think that the Canucks have the star power to be difficult to, match up against anybody come playoff time. But boy, if there's more sort of sleepwalking and indifference from Elias Pettersson come playoff time, that to me is a real issue here. So it's a lot to put on his plate, but he knows what he means to this team and how good he can be ultimately. We've seen it in flashes on a couple of lengthy stretches early in the season, again, midway through the year. But they need to get him going again. And he was playing with Besser and Höglander. Like, he wasn't being asked to lug around Ilya Mikheyev or Sam Lafferty.
No,
he had
doesn't make any sense.
Two highest scoring wingers that this team has available, and they were playing on the wings with Elias Pettersson and just nothing against a sad sack team like the Ducks the other day. So that was a little bit of a concern for me.
What is your concern level with Besser of health and beyond here, Jeff?
Yeah, look, we're at that point of the year where we're starting to see more guys get maintenance days. Like Pettersson took Saturday off practice, and you thought, is he going to play on Sunday? Well, he led all forwards at ice time, played over 20 minutes on Sunday. He penalty killed. He was out there late. So if there was something bothering him, certainly you couldn't tell by the coach's usage. As for Besser, scores, gets his 38th of the year to open the scoring on the power play, sort of that goal that's been missing from his arsenal, a loose puck at the side of the net in close. That was great. But he wasn't available after the game to speak to the media. We were told he was in treatment. And then he shows up at practice on Monday, has a long talk with the training staff of the bench before practice gets going. And then about 15 minutes in, he's gone. And Rick Tocchet said afterwards they basically kicked him off the ice, that they wanted him to take a full maintenance day, and Besser wanted to participate. But again, not available after practice to speak to the media. And I know people don't care whether a guy can speak to the media, but that's telling because he was once again getting treatment. So he's dealing with something without a doubt. And we'll see, back-to-backs starting this road trip. Probably not ideal for a guy that's trying to play his way through something here. So, I think at this time of the year, when you're into the, mid-70s in terms of games played for most of these guys, they're all dealing with something, and it's a question of that battle of rest versus pushing for the Pacific Division title, all against the backdrop of being as healthy as possible and ready to go whenever the playoffs begin.
They do have an extra winger now, superstar winger apparently too, in Dakota Joshua, which does change the equation in terms of how we sketch out the lineups. And it's crazy to think that we're talking about this given a rather infamous start to this season, I think, for Dakota Joshua, and the coach calling him out a little bit. And yet here we are where he is a difference maker. His size, his ability to score. I mean, he's better than 20 goal pace, certainly. It's an amazing story, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can see just 2 games back the impact that he had. It took that first game to sort of get up to speed, but he was physical against the Dallas Stars. And then on Sunday afternoon, I mean, the hands, my goodness, 2 games back and that kind of confidence to go between the legs and score. JT Miller afterwards was like, I don't even think I've tried something like that. And here's Dakota Joshua. And it looks pretty when it works, but just the confidence, I think, to have. He joked afterwards, I've been on the power play before, just at different levels, I suppose. Whatever the case, the 2 goals are great, and obviously they needed a late goal, and what a pass by Garland, much like the pass onto the stick of JT Miller in the previous game. So Connor Garland's going right now, without a doubt. And Dakota Joshua, it was the goals, but also earlier in the game on the forecheck, separated man from puck, forced a turnover, and then Garland scooped in and got tripped up, so they drew a penalty there. And early in the second period, off the rush, tried to set up Garland, and again drew another penalty. And we talked about the Canucks needing to get this power play going. Ultimately, it went 2 for 4 the other day. So Dakota Joshua scored a power play goal, but also had a hand in putting the Canucks on the power play. So yeah, there was a lot to like in his game, and I think it's encouraging that there are 8 games to go here. So he's probably not in top form after missing 6 weeks, but looked pretty good the other day. And if he can just continue to sort of ramp it up, he can absolutely be a force in playoff time. He's the biggest forward they've got. Tantalizing combination of size and skill, and a guy that hasn't had a chance to play in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So really looking forward to seeing what Dakota Joshua can do when the postseason rolls around here.
Do Miller and Besser need him on their wing, Jeff? Would you slot him somewhere else given the way he's going?
Oh, I think you're going to see him stay with Miller and Garland right now, and essentially it's a big upgrade for those 2 guys having JT Miller, the leading scorer, down the middle instead of a player like Teddy Bluger, who did a lot of good with that third line, but it's been a struggle for Teddy. I'm starting to wonder if he's ever going to score again. Hasn't scored since the game right out of the Christmas break against Philadelphia, and has had all sorts of chances. And so I think they like that combination, and they're going to stick with it. And then, you want to believe that Pettersson, Besser, and Höglander, if they stay together, that they can find something that can generate certainly more than it did on Sunday, but just overall, out on the road, they won't have last change. So it'll be interesting to see sort of the matchup role there. And if Rick Tocchet tries to spread his offense a little bit, but this feels like a weekly question because sort of one combination's going over here, but then you've got another that's stalled, and it's just, again, it's moving these pieces around and trying to strike with, whatever offensive force you've got on that given day.
So you see Miller Garland as more than just an experiment here late in the season?
Well, in the short term, yeah. Do I think that's game one of the playoffs? I can't sit here and say that because, again, things change so rapidly in Rick Tocchet's world, and he may want to experiment somewhere else. We don't know about Lindholm, and we were told he's going to be on the trip, but and he's been skating. But in terms of any sort of return date for him, your guess is as good as mine right now. So really, I wish I had an answer for you, Matt, but I do think that this is sort of a short-term take it tonight, see who was going, and then line them up accordingly when they get to Arizona for Wednesday night's game.
I just wonder about Besser and Pettersson on a line together in the playoffs. That's not exactly a lot of speed. That's not exactly a lot of physicality. You wonder whether other teams would look at that and
for sure.
Drool a little bit, going, we can play those guys hard, we can play those guys fast, and we can neutralize that duo.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely a concern, and I think that goes across the board. Like, this isn't the biggest team, and that's why it's good to have Dakota Joshua back. But I think those same things that you just mentioned apply to a guy like Pius Suter, obviously, who has a role to play on this team, but he's not particularly physical and not the fastest guy, and he's sort of been used as that Swiss Army knife safety valve for Rick Tocchet. So we'll see ultimately where they slot him, and even will Archie Baines play in the playoffs? I'm not sure about that. Podkolzin's physical, but he's not the fastest guy in the world either. And so, I think there are lots of questions. And this was one of the things that Rick Tocchet, his eyes lit up when I asked him after practice on Monday. I said, from a coaching standpoint, are you excited that you're going into Vegas and you're going into Los Angeles and you still have to go to Edmonton and you finish in Winnipeg? Those are all, playoff teams that'll be ramping up to the playoffs, hostile environments for these guys that really haven't tasted the true version of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, those are hard games, but I think maybe that's exactly what this group needs at this stage, just to sort of get that battle testing, Tocchet called, building up some scar tissue, because for the guys that were around in the bubble, this is not the bubble. This is going to be totally different. And you're not just playing opponents. You're going to have to play their crowds and the momentum swings and maybe the officiating and all that kind of stuff. So why not test yourself here with 8 games to go?
I wonder if Rick Tocchet would go so far as to remind them what it looks like. I would show, if I'm Rick Tocchet, video, the first 5 minutes of the first round of the playoffs, guys, the first 5 minutes, it's just caged animals, like the first 20 feet of the Kentucky Derby, it's so much fun. I would challenge my team to look like that, particularly in these big games versus Vegas and LA and the like. Show me what you're going to show me in the first 5 minutes of game number one, and just see if you can get that out of the team right now. Show me what you're going to do. Prove that you can do it even,
Well, I'll certainly channel the energy. I mean, the fortress, as they call it there, T-Mobile, even on a Tuesday, it'll be rocking and right from warm up on. And so that should get guys into it. And, I do think by the end of the homestand, these guys were ready to pack their bags and get out of town again. It's kind of funny that their last road game just happened to be in Vegas as well, tail end of that 3-game road trip that they swept. So can they channel that? But I hear you, Blake, get in there, set the tone. And if you remember the game in Vegas, it was the 7th of March, I think it was. They scored early and then they backed it up again. They got a goal from Phil Giuseppe of all people, but they got the jump on the Vegas Golden Knights, who since then have started to find their form. They're 8-2-1 in their last 11 games. They've added Hannafin, they added Mantha. Thomas Hertl is skating. He's not going to play in this hockey game, but for a lot of the season, Vegas has kind of sleptwalked and been a 500 team after an incredible start. I think we sometimes forget they were 11-0-1 out of the gate. And really since then, they were pretty average, but they made the trades that they made. It feels like they're finding their form now. And just keep this in mind as well. Logan Thompson, who looks like he's going to get the starting goal, 5 straight wins. He was the second star of the week in the National Hockey League. He's given up 1 goal in each of those 5 victories. So he's not giving up much. They're not giving up much. So wouldn't it be great to see the Canucks try to go in there, dictate, set the tone, and see if they can't get the jump on the Golden Knights early?
Last question from me, Jeff, but Nikita Zadorov drawing back in. How do you see the defense and load management working out here in the final 8 games?
Well, I think you'll see some, especially with the back-to-backs here. Like, I'd be really surprised if they get out of this game healthy and have all of their available options. I would think you'd see a little load management for the second game of the back-to-backs. Then they get 2 full days off, Thursday and Friday, before they take on the Kings on Saturday to wrap up the road trip. So they can worry about Los Angeles later in the week. But I do think, you make your lineup decision for this game in Vegas with an eye to Wednesday's game in Arizona. Zadorov comes in. Tocchet wouldn't reveal who is coming out, but for me, I think there'll be a tell here, right? Like Vegas, a possible first-round opponent. I would expect that the 6 defensemen they use in this game, you can probably draw on paper, at very least in pencil, dark pencil maybe, that these are the 6 best defensemen that they've got in the eyes of the coaching staff, and then see what they do in Arizona on Wednesday night. But that's kind of how I'm going to read it. So I'm curious to see. But Tocchet did say Zadorov goes in after being a healthy scratch on Sunday, so somebody will have to come out. Is it Noah Juleson on his 27th birthday? Be a bit of a bummer for him, but I think ultimately Noah knows where he slots in on the depth chart when everybody is available to the Vancouver Canucks.
And Blake, that's dark pencil, so that's the old wood ones,
right?
As opposed to the mechanical pencil, which is the lighter.
And so you're gonna need a Schaefer. Remember the blue Schaefer erasers, because only that's gonna take down the dark pencil.
The dark pencil.
Yeah. You may need to get like the carving knife and whittle, right? Like instead of pencil sharpener, you may have to get after it there. That's the kind of pencil we're talking about.
For fidgety kids like me, the pencil sharpener was a great place to be.
It's the first fidget
I could
spinner.
get up 15 minutes after class and go sharpen my pencil. What are you doing? I'm just sharpening my pencil.
Trying to kill off 11 minutes till 3 o'clock. Yes.
Thanks for this, Jeff. We'll catch up Friday.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now. In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Joined now by John Shannon, the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, the co-host of the Bob McCowan podcast. Good morning, John. How are we doing?
I am great, boys. Happy Tuesday.
Yes, and to you too. We'll start with our poll question. The Oilers, they're going to catch the Canucks. How worried would you be if you were in Vancouver?
If you had asked me yesterday morning, I might have said yes. That's how tight it is.
Isn't it beautiful? We were just talking about this, John. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's just that every game means so much right now. The math is spectacular, but continue, sir.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna follow up with your follow-up.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't need more than 16 teams in the postseason, because we're in the playoffs now.
Right.
That's what March has been great for, and April is great for. It's fantastic. But I think the Oilers need every point. I know they still have a game in hand, but they needed every point. And to lose a point in St. Louis last night will affect things. They play Dallas tomorrow night. The Oilers have the most difficult schedule down the stretch in the NHL. Starting last night, it was 10 games in 18 days. And that's going to be hard. That's going to be hard for the Oilers as they approach the playoffs as well. They're going to be a tired bunch by the time the postseason starts.
Well, especially since they're not too far removed from an Eastern trip. They had a late Eastern trip this year, John.
Really strange.
As well.
Really strange that there have been some trips at this time of year. Yet the schedule is always one that is a tremendous debate. And I can assure you, I think managers are going to talk about Would there be a possibility of increasing regional rivalries? We've talked about that before. And then also making sure that the last month of the season is within your own conference, at least. Some teams are fortunate. Los Angeles has a great down the stretch. I think they have 8 games left. 6 of them are against teams in the Pacific time zone, and the other 2 are in Mountain time. So it's not really an issue. But that wasn't the case for Winnipeg. Was the same way. They had a Eastern trip late. Some of the teams have had really difficult schedules, and I think the Oilers are at the top of that list.
What's your theory on team form before the end of the regular season, and what that means for playoff success? Have the Oilers been too good for too long that you'd be worried if you're the Edmonton, we're due for a scuffle here versus, Vegas and Dallas, who have just been red hot for the last 2 weeks sort of thing? Is that better? Or is it the Canucks who are due for another hot streak? It's been months since they were red hot.
I don't think there's a simple answer to that one, Blake. I just want my team healthy by the 20th of April. The philosophy, the mental toughness changes so quickly when it comes to the postseason. Would I like the team to win a couple of games near the end of the season? Sure. You look at Nashville. I think Nashville is probably the best example. They go 16-0-2. They've won a couple and lost a couple since the streak. You wonder, have they spent too much energy with that long stretch?
Yeah.
As we get down to the crunch time before the postseason starts, and will they have enough? I think that's one of the concerns. I don't mind scuffling at this time of year as long as you feel confident that your guys can get back on the straight and narrow, which I think the Canucks can. I mean, I think we saw that.
If they win 3 of their final 4, I'm not worried about them at all. But I do want that.
And I'm just from their perspective, I just want to make sure that their top 6 defensemen are on the ice for the postseason, and Thatcher Demko's in goal. And if you can give me a couple of games for Demko before the end of the season, then life's pretty good.
I would agree with you fellas, except that this is a team that's never done it before in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It almost has a feel to me like, they've spent their efforts, energies, what have you, in getting to where they're at. They're running on fumes a little bit. They haven't beaten a playoff team since March 9th. They're picking off wins against bad teams right now and losing to the better teams. And then, of course, you have, Demko. Besser leaves the practice ice. So I don't know. I'm starting to get a little concerned, a little worried about this Canucks team down the stretch.
This is so let's go into the S&P time machine here.
Okay.
And go back to Labor Day last year, and I would tell you that's very good, Blake. Excellent. I would ask you two the question. Here we are on the 2nd of April, and the Vancouver Canucks are first in the Pacific, and they're kind of scuffling. Would you take it?
Yes, of course.
You guys would have jumped off the Lionsgate Bridge to say yes. So, I mean, I know it's all relative, but I'm just saying this has been an unbelievable season for the Vancouver Canucks. Let's enjoy the ride a little bit, please.
It sure has. And John, another thing that we would not have said on Labor Day weekend, where would they be without Dakota Joshua?
Well, you know what? I can't believe that they haven't put the big line back together yet. But when you look at a couple of those stories, the Joshua story is one. Connor Garland's another great story. Connor Garland, depending on who you talk to, was very frustrated, thought about wanting to leave the club, changed his agent. The discussions improved, and Connor Garland has become the Connor Garland that Jim Benning traded for. And he's become a valuable part of this team. If they can put Bluger, Joshua, and Garland and Garland back together for the playoffs, that's a formidable third line that's going to challenge a lot of teams and be a difference maker for this hockey club.
That's if they don't need Joshua beside Miller and Besser, John, with the way things are going on that line and that revolving door.
Well, I'm one of those guys. I like lines and I stick with them. I'd like to stick with them, and I think that coaches every once in a while get the itchy trigger finger to change things. Bluger, Garland, and Joshua was too good a thing to change up in my mind.
And it allows you to me, stack the top six as much as it can be stacked on this team. So I agree. You get the best out of Teddy Bluger down there. And for as much as you use a fourth line in the playoffs, do I see Niels Hamon as a fourth line center in the playoffs? Not really. But if you're asking him to go chew up 5.5 minutes, I think he can probably do that.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And I mean, a lot of this is predicated on Elias Lindholm coming back and being healthy, right?
Right, sure.
Let's face it. I mean, but I can only assume that they are being cautious and they're, taking their time to make sure that he's ready for the postseason.
Voting is open for the Canucks Team Awards.
Oh.
Now, we're not going to ask you for your choices, but Team MVP, not yet, at least. You have some time, Shannon. We'll
do your homework.
We'll give you 10. But Team MVP, most exciting player, unsung hero. Boy,
could all be the same guy.
We've got some derbies in there. Like, there are some tough choices in there, as opposed to other years where it was sort of filling out a ballot.
MVP and most exciting player. Don't you think it's the same guy?
Could very well be. You're talking Miller, right?
I think that's Quinn Hughes.
Really?
Yeah,
Hughes,
okay.
Yeah. See, I thought you were going Miller.
I thought you meant Quinn Hughes too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when Quinn and there are times when I watch Quinn Hughes and I'm saying, well, he's not going to get there. He's not going to get there, and all of a sudden he gets there. He always amazes me at times when he controls the puck. He's so smooth at times, and it's not a question of overachieving, but boy, oh boy, is he good. It really, when you look at the Norris race, I mean, he's definitely in the Norris race for the league award as the best defenseman. But, the list of defensemen is so deep. When you look at Adam Fox and Hughes and Roman Josi, who's had a great second half of the season, and then Cale Makar, and then Josh Morrissey. I mean, there are lots of great defensemen in this league right now, and Hughes is right in that batch.
Does the second half for Hughes?
Incidentally, Makar 1 point back of Hughes for the scoring lead amongst defensemen. Vancouver has a game in hand, which they'll play on Tuesday.
Does the second half of Hughes hurt him for both the team and the league awards? Just the fact that he raised the bar so ridiculous in the first 50 games of the season that it almost seems disappointing in the second half, even though it's still a very good pace.
I don't think so. All of the guys have had their ebbs and flows. Josi did not have a really good first half of the season when Andrew Rennett was changing the style of offense they had. Who's been the most consistent? Josh Morrissey might have been the most consistent defenseman that I listed of all those guys through the first 72 or 73 games of the season. But I don't think so, because for the same reason that we bitch and complain that people on the West or players on the West Coast don't get recognition in the East with their good play, there'll be lots of voters who heard great things about Quinn Hughes and will put them on their ballot and did not realize last Tuesday night he did not play very well. So there's a good and a bad of being in Vancouver, or at least in the Pacific time zone.
Also, you have to commend the guy for, even if he gave up this points lead on the second last day of the season or something like that, leading for 98% of the season in that category. I mean, that says something. That's like going wire to wire in a PGA Tour, tournament back-to-back weeks. That's tough to pull off. So even if he doesn't ultimately win it, just to be on top and to be chased for 98% of the season, I mean, that's got to say something.
Being in the discussion. He's in the discussion every night.
Yeah.
And you do wonder at times, but he's so controlling at times on the ice. Do people take for granted sometimes exactly what he does out there as well? Because he's amazing to watch. He's so much fun to watch.
Playoff scheduling. How much wiggle room do you think the Canucks have there with the league? The league has its own agendas, but of course, built-in availability plays into it as well. How much do you think the Canucks are able to mold that to their own wishes?
Not as much as you think. starting at home helps, but start times will be dictated by television. This is the time of year where our friends at Rogers will say that we need the Canucks on certain nights. We need the Maple Leafs on certain nights. It's going to be, this is a really, really exciting time for national television in our country. When you consider that with the 4 teams that are going to make the playoffs, they're in 4 different time zones. And so there's a bit of a challenge that way. But at the same time, if you could put, 2 of those teams on one night and the other 2 teams on the other night, it is big drama, big money, and lots of eyeballs for the people at Hockey Night in Canada.
Did we ask you about Saturday, April 20th last week, John, and maybe just
Yeah.
going with the Eastern teams because the Eastern teams finished Wednesday as opposed to the Thursday?
That was my assumption when that all came about.
Right.
I can't see, Edmonton and Colorado play the Thursday night, which, by the way, could be the Art Ross Trophy race finish too for the scoring league.
So do the Canucks.
Good show.
Canucks are on the road to Winnipeg.
Yeah, so I can't imagine that any of those teams, Colorado, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Vancouver, starting even before Monday, to be honest. I just can't envision it.
Well, that'd be great. Talk it. Is he going to win the Jack Adams?
Well, again, I think like Quinn Hughes, he's going to be on the ballot. I think he's going to be in the top 3. He has done so many things positively that when you look around the league and the other coaches that have made a difference, I think Rick Bowness should be on the ballot. This might be one where there's all 3 Canadian. And Chris Knobloch should be on the ballot too. When you think about Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Vancouver, it's not going to be that way. We know that. But, Paul Maurice has had a magnificent year. John Cooper probably has done his best coaching job all in his career with what Tampa's done. But Rick Tocchet should win in my opinion, the Jack Adams Trophy as the best coach in the NHL this year. Yes.
No, I don't think it's close in terms of teams that have exceeded expectations.
No.
There's been some other good coaching jobs here, but with teams that were coming from a better base. I think,
jump 20 spots in the standings.
Vancouver.
Come on.
In the Vancouver.
Although when you look at the numbers that he put together after he took over, you can see that this was a team on the rise when he took over the coaching and saw something, and it also speaks to the smarts of putting Tocchet in place when they did, and you have to give Patrick and Jimmy some credit for saying, okay, we're in a transition year, but we need Rick Tocchet to weigh in on what kind of players we have and what we need to do and what changes we need to make. And I think that's really helped Rick this year.
Lastly, our friend Jonas Siegel of the Toronto Sports Media blog has reported.
By the way, the Toronto Sports Media blog guy lives in Seattle.
He lives in
Now
Seattle.
he does, yes.
Yeah, he lives in Seattle now. Yeah.
I read that too yesterday about Rogers and Amazon.
Yeah, that Amazon would take over the Monday night hockey slate, and that we'd have a new world where if you want to watch your games on Monday night, you're streaming and you're streaming Amazon.
Yep. Well, all I can say is that when the NFL did it and did it so successfully, not with one group of people, but with 2, because Amazon did the regular season and Peacock did a playoff, that legitimized it quickly. There have been plenty of discussions, not just in football, but now in hockey and in basketball for Amazon, who's going to play a role in streaming. Amazon's going to be part of the NBA. I guarantee you that as well. This would not surprise me. I do know in past years there has been senior management at Rogers Corporation that have tried to suggest that they should sell off some of their games. I don't know where the league feels about this. Just as an aside, when Gary became commissioner, the number 1 rights holder in Canada was not a television network; it was a brewery. And he was not very particularly pleased about not having a direct relationship with the television network. He had to deal through Molson's, and that changed. So having the third-party broadcaster, third-party relationship is one. I wonder if Gary's opinion has changed very much of that. Now, do I think that Gary wants Amazon part of the future? He certainly wants a streaming partner, and Amazon makes as much sense as anybody because they got more money than God. So is this a good 2-year experiment with Amazon? Perhaps. Might be a little risky, but it's just for Canada. It's not in the United States yet. It's just for Canada. And I would suspect then that they would also have to improve their quality of games, because the Monday night package really, there was a lot of dogs on that schedule, particularly early on in the schedule. Last night they had Toronto, Florida. Yeah, last night they had Toronto, Florida, which was a great game to have, but you have to make sure that if you go to that third party, go to Amazon, you give them a good slate of games.
I would agree. I would bet Gary doesn't like the optics of Rogers looking to offload. You know, he would rather be the broker of this deal rather than Rogers.
But I mean, therein lies the problem when you sign 12-year deals for that sort of freight. It's really hard to project the forecast that far in advance, and we know Rogers has taken a beating on this package, and in part because they just haven't had Canadian teams in the playoffs making runs.
Yeah, well, hey, and so here we are, as we talked about 10 minutes ago. I mean, to have 4 teams in the playoffs is a bonus. And the other thing I would suspect, and this is just me because I'm trying to put 2 and 2 together with the story that Jonah broke and get 5. You would have to think that there'd be some level of playoff package in it for Amazon. I'm not sure if I'm Amazon that I would go and buy this package without a playoff round or a series.
A game from every series or something like that. Yeah.
Or listen, Rogers in our country, Rogers controls all 8 series, right?
Yeah.
So, give them a series. Just give them a series. Doesn't it? And if I was Amazon, I'm not negotiating for them, but if I'm Amazon, I'd say, well, give me a Canadian team, but if push comes to shove, give me a US series, and I control the whole series.
And hey, this is minutia. Maybe the listener doesn't care about this, but it's a fascination for me. Is how is it branded? Like when Rogers is on CBC, it's still Rogers. Is it going to be Rogers on Amazon, or is it going to be Amazon on Amazon?
If you're Amazon, you want to be creative and do things your way.
Yeah, you think.
And so that becomes, again, is that part of the negotiation? Who knows whether it's part of the negotiation? The simplest thing would be to take a Rogers product and stick it on Amazon. That would be the simplest.
Yeah.
But
it's also cheap and tacky, I think. And it's Amazon. It's freaking Amazon.
Well, Amazon would then have to, buck up and find a way to deliver and produce and broadcast hockey.
Well, and they've done that with the National Football League.
Mm-hmm.
They spent a lot of money, but that's a different market too. That's the United States.
Right.
There's 60 million people versus 40.
That's right.
That's the real challenge.
That's a game is going to tens of millions of people, whereas you may not get a few million people on a hockey game. Correct. I just hope Bezos and the deputies are listening in here, Shannon, because the consulting fees that you just left on table that you could have otherwise collected had you not been fully honest with our audience, that's something.
I would trade it for a spot on the spaceship and go for a ride with Jeff. That's what I would do.
Jeff?
Jeffrey?
Can I call you Jeff?
How about Mr. B? Just Mr.
Yeah,
B.
something tells me. Yeah. Marvelous stuff, John. We'll catch up next week.
Cheers, boys.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.